Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our podcast. This is We the Locals. My name is Josie, and I'm with my co-hosts.
My name's Jessica.
And I'm Abby.
And we have Stu pushing buttons. Hi, Stu. Hi, Stu. So thank you for joining us. This evening, we want to kind of introduce ourselves, talk a little bit about what got us here and why we decided to jump into the world that we all find ourselves in, which is a very interesting world all the time. I sometimes pause and think I have a very weird life and things are just very interesting. And we wanted to share some of that with you guys and kind of guide you through things that are happening in our community here in South County and in North Broward. And we want to take you on the journey to becoming more empowered as a local population and involved in the world that we live in around us. So tonight we're going to kind of introduce ourselves, give our background, what brought us to this world, and go from there. So, Jessica.
Hi.
Hi. You want to start us off?
Sure. So my name is Jessica Jansen. I live in Boca. I've lived in Boca for about 17 years. I'm a transplant from Michigan, and my husband is actually Stuart, who's running our little soundboard and stuff for us. So thank you, honey, for helping us do that. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And so I find myself in a very interesting journey, like Josie said. And mine started, very simply is that my circle of friends and things that I was involved in was really small. I haven't watched the news. I didn't watch the news or anything for like 20 years. I gave it up a long time ago, so I really wasn't active in what was going on in the world. I just kind of was living my life and doing my thing. My circle was kind of pretty small, and I was just hearing all of these things about politics and what was going on, and probably in like 2016, a little bit before the election, it was Trump and Hillary, and that was the main focus, right? Everybody was talking about Trump and Hillary Clinton, and so I refused to vote for Hillary, so I did vote for Trump in 2016, and I quickly, just kind of went about my way and did my own thing, and then I heard all of these bad things about President Trump. I wasn't following anything, but I just heard all of these bad things. And so in 2019, I was like, okay, we're going to have a Democrat president because all of these bad things were being said about Trump. And so I took that opportunity to really get involved in the Democrat primary. I'm like, okay, I at least want to be educated enough that if I'm going to, vote for a president in 2020, that I wanted to be educated a little bit and know what was going on. And if it was going to be a Democrat, I kind of wanted a good one. So I started paying attention, and all I heard was just all of this negative stuff about President Trump. Like, no matter who spoke, they had 20 candidates, I think.
That's crazy.
And I'm like hearing, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and all of this stuff, and nothing really about plans for the country. It was just how terrible and awful Trump was. And I was like, this just doesn't seem right. Well, then I was hearing that he was a racist, and I can't remember the speech that he did, but he said where it was good people on both sides. I happened to just on the cuff listen to that speech, and then I heard all of this like rumblings about that he said, that he was supporting, these neo-Nazis and all of this kind of stuff, and I'm like, that's not what he said. That wasn't the speech at all. And then I'm like, something's going on. Something's just not.
Something smells rotten in Denmark, right?
Yeah, and I was like, what is going on? So then I started to pay attention, and I was like, these people are lying. They're lying. I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're just flat out lying. I'm like, they've always said for years politicians lie, but I'm like, they're just going with it. They are literally just like, they think we lie already, or like I don't know what was going on, but I was like, this just does not feel right. And then COVID happened. And I was like, and my background is in, bookkeeping, accounting, but I also ran medical offices. And so with my medical background, and I ran chiropractic offices too. So I had this experience and this history of some medical knowledge about how the body works and medications and how to live a healthy lifestyle. And so when COVID happened, I'm hearing like, oh, you got to mask up, you've got to, stay home. You can't go to the gym, you can't walk outside, but McDonald's on every corner was open, your fast food restaurants, all of that kind of stuff. I'm like, this is not health. Like, I don't understand. There is just a complete mismatch of what's going on based on my education and or experience, I should say. And I was like, this is just very strange to me. So 3 months into COVID, I'm actually, I'm a data girl. So it's like I went into the raw data of the CDC and I'm pulling numbers and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm like, this has like a 98.6 something, right. Survival rate. I'm like, I can't be the only one that figures this out. Like there is absolutely no way in the world I'm the smartest person in the room right now. Like this is just not right. I start to question everything I know about health. I'm like, because I'm always the first to blame myself. I'm like, oh, I must have something wrong. I must not know something. And I'm like, oh my God. So, and we didn't know what was going on. I'm like, we don't know. It could be very deadly. But as I'm pulling the numbers, I'm like, something's not adding up, Right. And then here in Palm Beach County, they did the whole mandate where you couldn't go anywhere without a mask. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at the time, but through my childhood experience of trauma is that I had body trauma. I had done a lot of personal development and trying to heal myself and heal the trauma that I experienced from a child and young adult. I was in an abusive relationship as well as a young adult. So I just had a lot of trauma and working in personal development and doing therapy and healing myself. I was like, I became a Reiki master teacher. So I was just really promoted on just the therapeutic aspects of just going through my own personal healing. And so everybody's in this mask mandate aspects. I bought this cute mask. It was sparkly. I think it had Baby Yoda on it. It was like the cutest
My
thing.
kids would approve.
I'm like, it was the cutest thing ever. I'm like, okay, I'll buy into this for a little bit and find out really what's going on. So at my office, they were like, okay, everybody's got to wear a mask now, this, that, and the other. And so I put on a mask. I almost pass out instantly, drop to the ground. I couldn't breathe. I was hyperventilating. I literally, like, my legs collapsed from underneath me. And it was the scariest experience that I could even imagine. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So in my experience in healthcare and helping people through trauma and body and personal development and through therapy, I had heard the term, like body trauma, and I'm like, maybe my body is holding on to remembrance of my trauma. And in one of my traumatic experiences, somebody held their hand over my mouth, and I kept having constant visions and dreams of this, remembrance of this traumatic experience. And I'm like, what's going on? So I started to do my research and try and just kind of figuring things out, called a couple therapists that I had known and asked some questions. And they're like, yeah, body trauma is real. You can, something as simple as that can actually, your body remembers and will go in. Like, I couldn't control my body. I felt like I was almost like outside of my body looking in. And I'm like, so I'm like, I can't wear a mask. And then I was like, I refuse to wear a mask. And then I got very defiant because I was like, I'm not gonna, and you can't make me. That's it. I'm like, if you're telling me that I have to put something on my face, I equated that to slavery. I'm like, I am not okay with this. I am healthy. I know that I am a healthy individual. I know my body well. I know, through my experience, the minute that I get sick, how I feel. And I could tell, like, my husband could tell you, like, I will be like 3-4 days and I'll be like, I feel like I'm coming down with something. And then, like, I'll put myself through it. And then 24, 48 hours later, I'm come down with something and then I'm fine. And so I'm like, so I'll know if I become ill. And so it was like being told, like, you're sick when you're not sick, and I'm like, this is a virus. This is how viruses work. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I was told I had to go to work when I had a cold, or
right, exactly.
I would
take some vitamins and go to work.
I would, send my kids to school if they had the sniffles still,
Yeah.
like I'm like, how are we so afraid of a virus? Because like I said, I had pulled this data and I'm like, there's certain age categories and things that this is affecting more. And then doing more of the data, I was just like, this is affecting, like people 55, 60 and older that have core, mobility,
comorbidities.
like, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. And so I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. And so I got defiant. And I was very thankful in Palm Beach County because they did at least do a medical exemption on the
We'll talk about that later.
I know. So you have to remember I was an infant in this whole process of political aspects and how much the government rules our everyday life when it comes into a situation like that. And so I was just very, I was naive. Let's just put it that way.
I think we all were, probably.
And I'm just like, there's just no way. So I was like, okay, if the most people can wear masks or whatever, like I shouldn't be punished because I couldn't. And so, but I followed the rules. I was basically, I think I was home for a good year. Like I didn't go anywhere. I didn't do anything. I went to work and I came home. I remember having a conversation with my boss. He's like, you got to wear a mask. And I was like, no. And he's like, and I was the HR manager, which was great.
Because he couldn't call HR on you.
Exactly. So I was like, no. And he's like, what do you mean no? And I said, yeah, I'm not going to. And he goes, I said, if I quit, I said, if you make me, I'll quit. He goes, you will quit. He's like, you'll quit? And I'm like, yeah. I said, this is a hill I will die on. Like I'm like, I will stay in my office. I had my own private office. I'm like, I will stay in my office. Anybody who needs to talk to me can call me on the phone. I got a refrigerator and a coffee maker for my office. I was like, look, if everybody else is scared and this is a problem, we had an office about 40 people. And so it wasn't small. But I'm like, I won't come out of my office. I'll go to the bathroom if I need to, but most of the time I'll stay in my office. And I said, otherwise, I'm not doing it. And he's like, okay, I guess we can compromise on that, And then he's like, and of course the story becomes, like, well, why can't you wear a mask? And then that irritated me because I'm like, it's nobody's business. It is absolutely nobody's business why I can't wear a mask. And being, almost forced to tell people that I was brutally raped as a teenager and traumatized was like almost like ripping a Band-Aid off over and over and over again. And I'm like, this is so toxic and unhealthy. And just your average person that's walking by you saying, you should have a mask on. Like, I wanted to punch them in the face and go, you have no idea what you're talking about or what this is. Right. And I wasn't thinking that I knew something more or better than anyone else. I just wanted to be respected for the fact that I couldn't. And I was willing to respect other people as well. And I would call businesses, like if I had to do business somewhere, you're like, hey, this is a situation and I can't wear a mask. Is there a problem if I, if I come to your business? And most 95% of the people that I would call or that I would have, oh, no problem. There's a medical exemption in the order, so you're fine. We'll just separate you from other people or whatever. And so that part, it's like most of the business owners and stuff, you could tell they were just trying to figure it out. And they didn't, like, they kind of, you could tell like they kind of felt the same way that I did, but nobody was okay with like saying it out loud.
Everyone was so afraid.
It was like the dirty little secret.
Right.
I'll speak to that later.
Yeah, exactly. I can't wait to get to that one.
It was like the dirty little secret. And so, so leading up through COVID, I was just like, this is just crazy. And then really paying attention to the primaries and what was going on. And then in 2020, when the election happened in November, I lost it. I'm like, this is enough. Like, this is gone. Like, the world has gone bat crap crazy. I live in an alternate universe at this point because I was like, there is no way. What's the Carrie Lake song? 81 million votes, my butt, type of thing. I'm like, yeah, this isn't okay. And so I was at home yelling at my TV like everybody else, like what is going on? And I decided, I'm like, there's got to be something I can do. I found a couple podcasts that I was getting good information from that I could verify, that I could resource. And, because I'm all about the data. I'm like, I will take you at face value, but I'm going to check the receipts and find out really what's going on.
Smart.
And, because I'm like, I was I was unvaxxed before it was cool. I did the hard research when my kids were little about vaccinations and things of that nature. So I knew that there was this government aspects when it comes to health and things of that nature that I just never bought into. I do have 3 daughters. My oldest is 28. I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old. So like I've done my research and things regarding my children and health for a long time. And so once I found some good resources that I could kind of tap into and get some good information, I found out about the precinct strategy. And that really was like, I'm like, oh, I could go to a meeting once a month and just kind of volunteer and try to help candidates get elected with the same views as me. I'm like, I'm talking to my husband and he's like, you want to do what? And I was like, I think we should get involved. And I'm like, I want to be part of the Republican Party and I want to get involved and I want to make sure that the people that were in Palm Beach County, that were leading Palm Beach County, never got elected again. Like, that was my thing. I was like, this is not okay. I didn't get actively involved in like board of commission meetings and things of that nature because I didn't even know I could. I had no idea I could go talk to my government for 3 minutes. I had no idea. If you would have told me 2 years ago you could actually call your state representative and have a conversation, I would have been like, no, I can't. Like, who does that? Well, people do that. And so getting involved in the precinct strategy and joining the Republican Party as a precinct committee woman in June of 21 really is what kind of brought me to that cusp of getting off yelling and screaming at the TV and getting involved and actually doing something. And so I've taken that and I've kind of ran with it. And so, and I met...
We'll get into more of that in the next episode of where we are from now to then.
Exactly.
Then to now.
Exactly. So I met amazing people, especially like you, Josie and Abby and Marcy and Michael. And we've just created a great family. So I think this is going to be really exciting. And I can't wait to bring more local information that I've learned to people that were like me, head in the sand, not really knowing what's going on, and just taking that information and bringing it back to the hands of the people so we can be empowered and make sure that our voices are heard. And this is the best way that I think that we can do that. And I'm so grateful and thankful that I get to do it with, not only my husband, but 2 amazing ladies that have become my bestest friends. I just appreciate you guys and thank you for giving me a voice and helping us get that information out there.
Awesome. Thank you. I love it.
You're welcome.
good. All right, Abby, tell us your story. How did you get here?
All right. So I am Abby Stafford. I am a born and raised Broward County resident.
Whew.
Ooh, that's a
Is that
Actually,
a badge
I
of
was
honor,
born-
a badge of
I was
shame?
born
Where
at
are we at
Holy
with that? No, I'm
Cross
just kidding.
Hospital in Fort Lauderdale. I did spend the first 6 years of my life in Boca.
Oh,
And
okay.
then my parents
We'll
built,
allow it then.
built a house in Parkland, and I grew up out in Parkland. It's ironic at the time of this recording, I am about 5 days out from leaving for a trip for 10 days to Israel.
Ooh, jealous.
Because I was supposed to go on this trip on March 14th, 2020. So back up to that time. I have an accounting background. I'm a CPA. I left public accounting a long time ago, almost 13 years ago. And I work in the family business, which is a commercial tire dealer. So we do a lot of business to business. We do a lot of business with all the local municipalities here in the Tri-County area, including the county governments and school boards and the local cities. I also do financial coaching on the side. I help individuals and couples put together a game plan to pay off debt, build savings and wealth. And that's really where my passion has lain for the last 5 years. Just really a passion to help people like get a handle on their finances. So my life was chugging along with like both of those avenues through early 2020. I had actually gone out to a conference in Denver, and the rumblings of COVID had kind of started around that time. But everybody was there was like several thousand people at this conference at the Gaylord out in Denver, and everybody's like, "Oh, just use extra hand sanitizer and all of that." So that was early February. That was Super Bowl weekend. I was out there Super Bowl weekend. And I come back, and again, I was getting ready for this trip. And the weekend before, I was supposed to leave on Saturday, March 14th. The weekend before, I'm spending time with my family, and I can't remember if it was an email or a phone call from my pastor's wife. It was a church group that was going, saying that Israel was closing its borders to all flights coming in through Europe and ultimately through the United States, and that our trip was being canceled. And I was really angry at the time because I'm like, this is a virus. Like, they are shutting down the world and they're like canceling my trip. The most important thing.
Most importantly,
for a flu
real.
virus,
Right.
yes. And then later that week, leading up to March 14th, the NCAA March Madness tournament was canceled. And I was like, whoa, they're canceling sports over this? Betting?
huge.
Like all of this. Like, they were canceling. There was something else going on around the time that they canceled too. And I'm just like, okay, like maybe this is more serious than everybody thought. And so working in the family business, working in small business, between 3 companies, we have about 100 employees. And we started having to navigate by the end of the month, by the end of March, I think Congress had passed the CARES Act, which included caveats for COVID sick leave, COVID family sick leave, like all these different things, and just trying to navigate these uncharted waters as a small business because we did start having employees. We had an employee in our Miami location that went out with COVID before the end of March of 2020. And if you remember back to that time, you had to quarantine for like 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Getting the test and getting the test results back took like the better part of a week. Mm-hmm. There weren't that many test sites to go to. And like the CDC was mandating that these employees had to be out. They had to test. They had to test negative to return to work. I mean, like this, the 2 weeks of COVID sick leave didn't really cover all of that in the early stages. So we're learning to navigate that the best we can. Then, everybody was staying home. It was real weird. It was real weird because I'm a single woman. I have a dog.
Buster.
I work with my dad. But like that first weekend when everything shut down, like I was home by myself with my dog, and I was like, this is lonely. Like, fortunately, we were considered essential. Like, literally, Miami-Dade County called us and said, "You are essential. You have to stay open." So I went to work every single day. I never worked from home. I mean, coaching, I always work from home, but my day job, I never worked from home. And I was so grateful because that was my social interaction, especially those early days. And, they shut the gyms down. I was an avid CrossFitter at the time. I still try to keep up now, but I fortunately had a few pieces of equipment that I threw out on my carport. I ordered a bunch of stuff like right as things were shutting down. It took 5 weeks to get there, but I pretty much had an almost complete home gym within the first month of COVID. But like Jessica said, telling people not to work out, not to exercise, not to get fresh air. And then the mask mandate started. And if you guys think Palm Beach County was crazy, Broward County kept it, took it up a notch.
Amped it up.
We were required to post signs on our doors in 3 different languages saying that masks were required and that social distancing was required in the store. And they established a hotline in Broward County that people could narc on small businesses.
That's right.
Yeah, they had people, snitching on small business owners that were just trying to make ends meet. And our company, I'm so grateful. People need tires. Businesses need tires, and the state did a really good job of keeping those construction projects running because they're oh, there's less people on the roads now. Let's get some of these road projects done and all of that. But so even from early on in COVID, what I was hearing on the local news, what I was hearing on the national news, what was being shown on the Sun Sentinel page, all of that, even on Fox News, it just didn't make sense. I was I remember watching TV, and I don't watch a lot of TV, but I noticed all the commercials were so coordinated. Stay home, save lives. We're all in this together. All of these messages, and I was something's off. Something seems really coordinated and orchestrated. I need to find an alternate source of information. So where did I go? Twitter.
Ooh, dun, dun, dun.
I had created a Twitter account in 2009 and had mainly sat dormant for over a decade. And I got back on Twitter in 2020, and I just started kind of hunting around, following different people. I don't even remember who I followed in those early days, but by summertime, I was starting to follow some people that were like Jessica, digging into the data, digging into the Florida Health Dashboard, the CDC dashboard, comparing. I remember monitoring the state of Florida health website where they were showing the outbreak map of the state and the different counties, and I was watching the numbers in each county grow, and as more and more counties experience cases and all that. But by summer, they were tracking the deaths, and by late summer, Florida had really experienced a spike. It's hot, people stay indoors in South Florida in the summertime, the whole state.
It is hot.
It's kind of like the inverse of the north in the
Exactly.
wintertime.
Yeah.
And everybody's dying in Florida, and by that time I'm they were tracking, they were reporting it wrong. The news outlets were reporting it wrong. There's a lag time. They were amping up the deaths, and yes, people died. Yes, COVID is a real thing, and we're probably going to get a medical disclaimer slapped on this episode.
I know, right off the bat.
But
I didn't even think of that.
you think about it, and obviously our focus is local, but so many election laws were changed across the country in 2020 and allowed for ease of voting, but it's also an ease of allowing to fudge the numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about machines and software and all that stuff. It's just good old fashioned, voter manipulation. But it's funny you talked about calling your state representative and, reaching out to your local politicians. And when they, not so much, I did email my county commissioner about reopening the gyms in late May or right before they did. I'm these guys are small businesses. You need to get these gyms reopened. People need to be healthy and exercise. And ultimately they did. But then in July, when the cases were spiking, Broward County established a mask mandate while you were working out in the gym.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
okay, first of all,
Forgot
I
about
can't
that.
breathe when I'm working out to begin with. Second of all, for those of us that work out at CrossFit gyms, it's basically a glorified garage with big bay doors where there's a pretty good cross breeze in most of them because all the
Right.
doors are open. And so I paused my gym membership. I'm I refuse. I refuse to work out in a mask. This is asinine. I sent a nastygram to my county commissioner, and he threw Fauci's name back in my face. And I was this is a lost cause. I emailed my state representative, who happens to live in my town, and I think I referred to him as a congressman. But he was very receptive. He's like the lone state Republican representative from Broward County. So, like,
Poor
you know,
guy.
he appreciated my email, and he said that the state was trying to take steps to, control, lessen the control the counties had over some of these things because they were overstepping their bounds. Again, hurtling towards the election in November 2020, and then, the election happened and the weeks that ensued. And I just remember a group of us that found each other on Twitter. John Taylor was the main ringleader. He developed a data dashboard through FAU that did a really good job of tracking the numbers a little more factually than some others. And
We'll address that at a later time, probably. I'm sure.
the craziness lives on.
Oh yeah.
He DM'd me and he said, "Hey, would you be up for meeting with a couple, a few of us in person, to commiserate, the year that has been and the election and just everything going on?" I was like, "Absolutely, I would love to meet you guys in real life and just kind of, I don't drink beer, but have a beer with you." And so in December of 2020, there was a group of 8 of us that met at a local brewery, and for some, I think it was like the first time to socialize like that since COVID, 9 months, 10 months. And it was just so refreshing because it just like-minded people that hadn't really paid a lot of attention, especially at the local level before, getting together, realizing how important it is and how good it is to socialize and to, meet with like-minded people. And at the end of the meeting, at the end of the night, it wasn't really a meeting, that first one. It was just kicking back and talking crap, basically. We were all like, let's do it again next month. So we did. And we've done it every month since.
We will hear more on that
Yes, we will.
in the next episode, because that is an exciting place to stop, because I think we'll get to more on that, right?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Abby. All right, so I'll give a little background on.
Real quick,
Yeah.
move this down a little bit because it's kind of in your face.
Oh, it's in my face. Don't want to block my face. Just kidding.
There you go.
There, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Stu.
You're welcome.
Keeping us on point here. All right. Oh yeah. Okay. All right. So my name is Josie Makovic. I live in Boca Raton, Florida. I've lived in the greater Boca Raton area, so Delray, West Boca, pretty much since I was 5, with a brief stint, about 5 years elsewhere, which we can talk about another time. But for the most part, I was raised here in South Florida, here in Boca Raton. I was always politically involved to some level. My parents were very politically involved. My dad was part of the Republican Executive Committee when I was younger. He would drag my mom to meetings. She would go and take a nap, and he would have the meeting, and they called it their date night. And and then he left at, kind of life and so on. And I growing up, I saw George W. Bush. I saw Elizabeth Dole. I saw Bob Dole. I can't remember who else. My mom, anytime there was a rally or a place to go, she would take us. My parents have worked for the supervisor of elections for years. And so I was always raised very politically aware. Always had, I registered to vote. I couldn't wait to register to vote. And I was just always so excited and felt like I kind of knew a lot. And I did to some degree, more than an average person, but I didn't know as much as I should have known. And then so fast forward, kind of leading up into 2020, I was kind of similar to Jessica. I was always very medically aware as well. Lived a bit of an alternative medical lifestyle. Also did a lot of research in vaccinations. I was raised by hippie parents from Colorado. So that kind of spilled over into my
They're
life.
the best.
They are the best. We love you guys. And they kind of imparted a lot of just questioning, always question. My mom always asked a million questions about everything. And she would always say kind of disparagingly about herself a little bit, like, oh, I always have lots of questions. But I was like, no, I kind of just learned, you just ask questions, always ask questions. And And so that's kind of what I've always done. And so it led to me having my children. I have 3 children. They were all born at home. And I was just raising them. So I was listening to always a lot of podcasts about medical freedom, about health. Kind of got me into this really was religious exemptions. So in 2015 and 2016, a wave of legislation was starting to kind of build up. 2015, 16, 17, kind of in that window of time. Starting in California, obviously, and kind of worked its way. Yeah, I know, right? Worked its way around. So California pulled religious exemptions for vaccinations. So in case you don't know, states require children to have certain childhood vaccinations in order to attend school. Most states up until that time period, except for 2, so Mississippi and West Virginia were the only 2 that did not allow for a parent to file some sort of religious, and or some states have philosophical exemptions. So suddenly California is pulling religious exemptions. New York started pulling religious exemptions. California then started pulling medical exemptions. So if a doctor saw that a child was vaccine injured, they couldn't write an exemption for that child. So they pulled medical exemptions. So this started to kind of build up across the country. And New Jersey, so in 2019, New Jersey, shout out to New Jersey, seriously, they had a bill to remove their religious exemptions. And the day that they went to go vote on it in their capital, there 4,000 people showed up at that Capitol building. I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
I have a friend that was there.
Yeah. I mean, I was
awesome.
watching it. I was watching we were on a road trip and I had my tablet out and I was just watching this whole thing. And it was amazing. And they did what we are supposed to do with especially local government in our states, which is to make their voices heard. And they said, no, we're not going to put up with this. And the bill stopped. So New Jersey still has the religious exemptions. Well, lo and behold, that same year, starting in December or in 2019 in Florida, we had a senator down in Broward who wrote a bill to remove Florida's religious exemptions. So I was like, oh, no, it's coming here. This can't happen.
Which senator was it, by the way?
Senator Book.
Oh, of course it was.
Yes, of course. So she wrote this bill, and so I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I got to find people. I got to get together. I'm like, look what they did in New Jersey. We have to be able to do that here. So I started reaching out, and I had a couple of like-minded friends, and we started building, and I met people, and we went, and it was my first time ever like having anything to do with any of my local government in any way whatsoever. We went and met with our then senators, which was Senator Radon or something like that. Met with his aide, and I went with a friend of mine, and we had our all of our information and all of our books and we were like, listen, and so we did all of this. So we kind of waited with bated breath for that March. It was March 12th, I think the session was supposed to end, and that bill never went anywhere. So thank God we really it got squashed very early on, but it kind of distracted me and made me focus on COVID kind of simultaneously because I was really paying attention to really what was happening in Florida at the Florida legislature, but then ongoing was like this like COVID bubbling up in the background. And I had friends talking to me, they're locking down here. And I was like, what do you mean they're locking down? This is a virus. Like, who locks down? Like, what does that even mean? Like, what is that? This is insane. And so, and then all of a sudden, like locking, like the thing started coming out. And I, from the get-go, was like, bull. This is not real. Like, the virus might be real, but what they're doing with it is not what you're supposed to do with the virus. This is not how bodies work. Virus is like, it's not going to stop a virus. You can't stop a virus by locking people in their homes. Like, it's just not logical. Like, where's logic? And again, because my background with my mom is always asking 8 million questions, I was like, I have questions. Lots and lots of questions. And nobody's answering any questions. Who do I get to answer my questions? So I was like, okay, fine. I'll wait 2 weeks. We'll all sit home and we'll see what happens. And then it's better. This better be 2 weeks. And so we're sitting at home. At the time, I had 3 kids, 5 and under, and we lived in a 2-bedroom condo. And so all of a sudden, no school, no gym. We were very regular attendees of the YMCA. No YMCA. My husband had to work from home. We had a 2-bedroom condo. He had to work in a tiny little walk-in closet. We called it his cloffice. And my kids are, I know, poor Nick. He's working in this cloffice, and the kids are like, Daddy's home, yay! It was crazy. And I didn't want to take them anywhere, not because I was afraid of the virus, but because people weren't taking kids places. And I didn't want people to yell at my kids because I was bringing them places. And this is even before masks started to come out. Like, masks didn't come for like weeks after all this.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So, but I kind of felt weird about taking them places. And so I just started to get really nervous, and I just bought food. And I went to Costco like 16 times, and I just kept buying food because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. We were never worried about running out of toilet paper. But I do remember the first day that rumblings started happening about COVID, and I had to go to Costco anyway that day for my grocery shopping, and I pulled in and I was like, oh my gosh, is there a hurricane coming? Like, what is happening? It was so weird. The lines, the people, it was like this weird tension. So anyway, so I waited the 2 weeks. We kind of sat home. We rode bikes and played with a neighbor kid and went to the pool and did all these things. And so when the 2 weeks, I waited till the 2 weeks ended, and I was like, okay, I'm done now. Let's go. Let's open the playgrounds. And this is March. It's the most beautiful time of the year. The weather was amazing. And my kids are like, let's go to the playground. No playgrounds. So I said, okay, well, let me contact the city, because we lived in the city of Boca. And so I emailed the city council and I say, okay, when are we opening playgrounds? And they said, oh, we aren't responsible for the playgrounds. You have to go to, yep, exactly, pointing this direction. You need to go to the county. And I said, okay, what does that mean? And they said, you need to contact your county commissioners. And I was like, what's a county commissioner? And here's where all my political background stuff just, I don't know what a county commissioner is. Shame on me. So and I mean that seriously, I should have known. So I looked up, Googled, what's a Palm Beach County Commission, and I found the county commissioners, and I was like, oh, okay. So I found the email addresses, and I sent an email to all the commissioners, and then I said, when are you opening playgrounds? And so I got an email back from Bob Weinroth, my county commissioner at the time. And he said, we are going to be having our first, they had taken a close down for, I guess, 6 weeks or whatever it was. And they said, we're going to be having our first meeting. Why don't you come and you'll have public comment and you can let your voice be heard and we'll talk about it. And I was like, awesome. This is what local government's supposed to be. I'm going to go up there. We're going to have conversations. We're going to all talk about it and we're going to get this fixed. So I gathered some of my friends who were all coming off this whole vaccine thing. Everyone's all hyped up because we want, the bill didn't go anywhere. So we're all ready for our next fight. Let's go do this. So we go up to this meeting. We sit in there. The meeting was 4 hours long before we even got to speak. And they sat there for an hour and a half arguing about an article in the Palm Beach Post and who was working in this time and who wasn't working and this and that and this other thing. And sorry. Banging that. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh my gosh, people are hurting. People's businesses are closed. Children, abuse is happening. All this stuff. And you guys are arguing about who was or was not working during the 6 weeks. I mean, what is happening here? So I went and I gave my first ever 3-minute speech. And I was...
Which was awesome, by the
Thank
way.
you.
I highly suggest you guys watching it. If you,
it is on my Facebook page.
Yep, look it up. Look it up.
It was...
very impactful.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was... I was very nervous, but I was like... I sat there and I listened to the way that they spoke about the people, and it infuriated me. And I heard them say things like, well, we should let the people take their boats out, and we should let the people do this, and we should let the people do that. And it showed me how much power these tiny little tyrants had sitting up on that dais telling me what I am allowed to do as an American citizen. And I'm trying to bring my rage.
She gets fired up.
So I'm getting all fired up and yelling and start talking with my hands more. So of course nothing was resolved. I think they voted to open the walking paths at the parks, and I was like, that's not helpful at all to anybody. So they opened golf. They opened adult sports, but nothing for the children. So I was like, okay. So I went back to that county commission meeting, every meeting for the next, I don't even know, 3 or 4 months. And I started to really research and realize who these people were, how they got elected, how involved they were in our everyday lives. And I'll fast forward to October. September. I gave a speech that went viral. Thankfully, my name was not attached to it, though, so a lot of people don't know that it was me. I just saw it popping up. They do now. Well, if you can find it. But I told them that in that speech, I told them that they would never run unopposed again. Because I started researching all of these people sitting up there, and I saw that several of them had been placed there because they ran unopposed. And I said, okay, how is this happening? So I started just figuring out ways to get involved. I watched, same as everyone else, what was happening in Washington, the 2020 election. And I mean, we were living in such weird times. I remember talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, quite honestly, if the aliens just beamed down on my front yard tomorrow, I'd be like, this might as well happen. I mean, the weirdest things
Right?
were going on. And like Abby said, it was we would watch the news at night because we had nothing else to do during those first, especially couple of weeks. And we'd watch Fox News and they would talk about America and lockdown and America and shutdown and these things. And my husband and I looked at each other and we were just like, what is this? This is the most bizarre like spell that's been cast over people that to just follow along with this. And I was very vocal on social media. I mean, I to be honest, I have a lot of friends that I'm not really friends with anymore. I went from having almost 2,000 friends on Facebook to having like 1,500. I'm pretty sure a lot of people unfriended me because I was like, listen, I can't tell you exactly what's going on, but something deeper is going on. What they're trying to sell us is not something we should be buying. And so also, like Abby, it's funny that you say that because I also had a Twitter account that I had created years before. Not active because I was always very anti-Twitter. When Twitter first came out, I really hated it. I thought it was the most epitome of a narcissistic society. Who wants to listen to what
That's
I'm
exactly
doing
what I
in
thought.
150 characters
Yeah,
at
I
all
never got
times of
into
every day?
I never got into Twitter
So I
either.
think I can't remember why I created Twitter, but I never used it. So, but I was like, okay, there's that. Facebook is getting crazy. I was getting censored. I was getting tagged. I was getting jailed. I was all there. Maybe Twitter will be different. So I went to Twitter, and I can go back and see where I started tweeting in probably like April-ish of 2020. And so, and I'll wrap up here with this story here about the masks. And so I was tweeting. I don't even know how this woman got my name. I was tweeting something about masks. And I got a DM from a reporter, and she said this had to have been April of 2020. And she said, I'm doing a story on masks. Can I interview you as someone who is anti-mask? And I was like, I'm not anti-mask. I just don't want to wear a mask. I don't think I had been following and listening to a lot of alternative medical blogs and podcasts, and there was a lot of data and information coming out. I mean, I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about hydroxychloroquine in February. So, like, when Trump started talking about hydroxychloroquine in whatever it was, April, I was like, yeah, I already knew that. I mean,
Thanks for catching up.
Yeah. Welcome. But so had all this information. I was like, sure, I'll share all my information with you. Let's do it. So I had she wrote this article, and I was in it as this anti-masker. And that was the first time that started popping up. And I was like, whatever. And so we go through the county commission. And so in June, so again, I mean, it was such a wide time. And this is why the masks were such a weird thing, because you would think with a virus so deadly, that would have been, and that was one of the tools in the toolboxes, as one of the people in the commission used to say, that would have been something they did right away. But they didn't. Everything started in the middle of March of that year. And then June 23rd is when the mask mandate came out in Palm Beach County. So all that time, we went to county commission meetings, no masks. We were living our lives, no masks. Everything was normal. And then they started rumbling, and they started talking about masks and masks and masks. And so they finally put it on the agenda. And we were emailing and talking and saying, no, this is insane. And here's the information why. So at that meeting, there were 50 people that spoke out. And it was a very long meeting for public comment against masks. And they still passed it. And all hell broke loose in that room. It was mayhem.
So much for listening to the people.
Yeah, so
right?
much for listening to the people. And so I joined with about 4 other people. And we had an attorney who was willing to do it pro bono. And so we sued Palm Beach County for that. And we did not get very far, mostly because we were in Palm Beach County, and we had a judge who ruled against us, even though he went to a party later that day or that same time period, unmasked. And it was
Wow,
it
I
was
didn't know
crazy.
that.
Yeah, he did. We got him at a party, at a buffet, buy food, not wearing a mask. At the same time that he ruled against us, saying that masks are so important, and it was just such a sham. And it was so the case eventually got dismissed because DeSantis, when he came in and
Made it moot.
made it moot, exactly. But so if you want to Google me, there's some fun articles out there about me.
Was that the lawsuit that Anthony Sabatini was involved in?
No, that was a different one. He
Okay.
was involved in one in Broward.
In Broward.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
right.
we had a different attorney who, we tried to get Anthony to work with us, but he was already working in Broward, and we had an attorney who was involved in Palm Beach County stuff already.
Mm-hmm.
So he was great. He actually lives in Orlando, I think now. His name is Leo, and he was really good. And there was a couple of other attorneys who jumped in, and through it all, I learned a lot, and I met a lot of really cool people. I hadn't even met you guys yet at this point. This is still in 2020, and But it brought me to a place where I realized that I could never just, I mean, I've always been this way. You cannot just be quiet when you see something going on that is, you have to ask questions about. And when you don't get questions, when you don't get answers, that means you probably should keep asking questions. And that, I think, was the thing that infuriated me the most when I would stand in front of the county commission, is I would ask them questions, like real questions, and they would say, "Thank you for your comment." And I was like, it wasn't a comment, it was a question. And you're not answering me, and I pay you to answer me, and I'm not getting answers. And so that kind of brought me all the way here, kind of did the next steps, and to which we can get into more in the next episode about where it all took us all after that. But that's my intro into politics and the local world. And it really did show me how important the local government is. And that's why I think we've all decided that local is where we want to focus. That's why the podcast is We the Locals, because yes, it's important to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in Washington and around the rest of the country.
And it's good drama.
It's good drama. Oh, yeah.
So much drama.
So much drama. Exactly. Such good drama. But what we can affect, the change that we can affect in the world is our own little circle. Our hula hoop, as my mom likes to call it. You can only affect what's in your hula hoop. And so, our cities, our counties, our cities, our counties, our state are our hula hoops. And that is why it is important to know what's going on, to be involved, to know what's happening at your city council if you live in a city, to know what's happening at the county commission, and see what are they doing, how are they spending our money, why are they raising our taxes or lowering our taxes? Did they really lower the taxes, or was it something else? And where is the almost $7 billion budget that we have here in Palm Beach County going? And do you know what Broward's budget is?
I'll have to look at the 23-24 budget.
Yeah.
I know they were workshopping it today.
Yeah, I know we're about to go into budgeting too. So it's up there too. I'm sure it's probably comparable, if not higher.
Maybe more.
Yeah, it's probably higher because I think Broward has a higher
people.
population. Exactly. So we need to know what's happening, and that is why I think we all felt. We've talked about this for a long time, starting a podcast, and I'm really excited that we're here and that we're finally moving forward with it. And so, anything else before we wrap up for tonight?
I think I'm good. I'm just excited. And, we've always talked, but just to kind of hear your guys' stories, kind of like from the start to, what got you to the point where I met you, I feel like I was left out at that, the beer part, in the beginning, I feel like I kind of crashed the party afterwards, so it's like I felt like I missed out on that part. So to hear you guys a little bit, was very interesting and very cool to kind of get to know you guys a little bit better. And I think this is going to be really exciting for us and for, Palm Beach and Broward counties for sure. So I'm excited to keep this going and seeing where this leads.
Yeah, and I hope that we can get other people here in the area to nerd out as much as we do on talking about local politics, because as we've been planning for this podcast over the last couple months, and we do our weekly meetings, and it's like a gab fest every Thursday night where we just spill the tea on what's going on in our cities and our counties, and
my gosh,
it's our version of therapy.
It is, but it is. I hope so too, because I'm like, man, people. I mean, I sat through a city council meeting the other night, and I was like, I wonder, am I weird that I find this fascinating? I mean, some of it's very boring, but
no, you're not weird because I'm right there.
All right,
you.
See, thank you. I'm just hoping. So yeah, we're hoping. Tell all your friends, hoping that we can.
Were we all at city commission meetings this week?
Probably.
I wasn't there, but I watched.
She watched it.
I've watched
the twitching.
Well, I guess I've been in the commission meetings.
Yeah. So, all right. So I think,
I think that's a good place to stop for this episode, and then we'll get into where we went from there, our humble beginnings, and up until where we're at now.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this is a little bird's eye view of local politics, and hope that you enjoyed everything tonight. You can check us out at WeTheLocalsPodcast.com. Check us out. Put us into your contact information. Subscribe to our newsletters. Hopefully we'll be able to get more information out soon. So have a great night, everybody, and be sure to stay local.